The bodies of soldiers were scattered on a hill, caused by the Russo-Japanese War in 1904. In this war, thousands of soldiers died horribly. After the war for days, only a few of the Japanese soldiers left, while Russia still had hundreds of soldiers ready to fight. One of the strongest Japanese soldiers was Seiichi Sugimoto. His best friend, Teraji, was still alive and ready to continue fighting. Not long after, the Russian soldiers fired a cannon as a sign that the war would continue. The Japanese soldiers immediately got ready. The rest of the troops wanted to fight to the end. In the second battle, the Japanese troops were completely wiped out by the Russians. Even Sugimoto and the others could not give equal resistance. However, Sugimoto did not just give up. He managed to rise again. Surprisingly, he was able to attack the Russian soldiers alone. He didn't even fall even though he was repeatedly hit. He turned into a mass murderer who could slaughter hundreds of enemies alone. In the end, Sugimoto managed to murder all the Russian troops. From that day on, he was nicknamed as Immortal Sugimoto. 2 years after the war, Sugimoto decided to retire from the military and live his new life. However, he had to live his life with scars on his face, which always reminded him of Teraji's death during the war. Sugimoto felt guilty because he couldn't protect his best friend. Then one day, Sugimoto went to Hokkaido to search for gold to survive. Since his retirement, the government never paid attention to him, even though he had contributed to defeating Russia. And now he had to look for pieces of gold just to meet his daily needs. When Sugimoto was working, a drunken man greeted him, and this man knew Sugimoto's nickname, the Immortal Sugimoto. The man randomly told stories that didn't make sense to Sugimoto. The man said that one day, the Ainu people collected tons of gold from the river to be used as a war capital. For your information, the Ainu tribe is one of the oldest tribes in Japan, which is almost extinct. The Ainu people have a short body and a more defined facial structure than the Japanese in general. At that time, they felt colonized by the Japanese government, which abandoned them, but continued to exploit their natural wealth. Finally, they decided to form and fund an army with their gold. But unfortunately, a mysterious man massacred the gold transporters. After that, he buried the gold in a place that had never been touched by humans, and while hiding in Hokkaido, he was caught and detained in the most terrible prison in Japan called Abashiri. There he was tortured by the guards because he didn't want to tell them where the gold was. What's worse, they also paralyzed his legs so he couldn't escape from prison. Then one day, he thought of hiding the map in a secret place. He tattooed 24 prisoners on their bodies, which formed 24 codes to find the gold. So anyone who wanted to find the location, then he had to catch the prisoners and unite the 24 codes. He told the prisoners to escape from prison, and if they succeeded, he would give the gold as a reward. The next day, the Japanese soldiers heard about the rumors of the tattoo. Therefore, they decided to gather the prisoners somewhere. But apparently, the prisoners had prepared themselves to escape according to orders from the mysterious man. So when the soldiers were careless, they immediately attacked the soldiers. Surprisingly, the prisoners managed to massacre the Japanese soldiers and fled to different places. After telling the story about the gold, the drunken man slept because he was too drunk. Meanwhile, Sugimoto warmed himself in front of a small campfire while reminiscing about Teraji. During the war in the past, he was careless and was almost shot by Russian troops, but Teraji appeared and saved him. While Sugimoto was remembering his friend, he was suddenly held at gunpoint by the drunken man, regretting telling him about the gold. But Sugimoto immediately fought him back. Seeing that man frightened, Sugimoto was sure that the story was the truth. Therefore, he chased the man to the hilly area, wanting to get more information about the gold location. But on the hill, Sugimoto saw that the man had been buried in a pile of snow with a bear scratch on his stomach. Unexpectedly, the man had died from being attacked by a bear. Sugimoto accidentally saw a tattoo on the man's body, and it was exactly the same as the prisoners who hold the gold map code. It means that the man was one of the 24 prisoners who managed to escape. Sugimoto decided to take the body with him and intended to look for other prisoners. If he managed to get the gold, then he would no longer live in misery. But when Sugimoto was going down the hill, he saw a bear approaching him, so he immediately ran as fast as he could. Luckily, a young Ainu girl named Asurpa managed to kill the bear. When he saw the bear was killed, Sugimoto was amazed by Asurpa's skill. The Ainu people were already used to fighting brown bears, especially in winter. All this time, they lived near the habitat of wild animals, so they are good at survival. Asurpa then asked about the dead man, and at first, Sugimoto didn't want to tell the truth. But because Sugimoto owed Asurpa Finally, he told her that the man was a former prisoner who had a tattoo in search of gold treasure. Seeing that tattoo, Asirpa suddenly remembered his late father, who turned out to be one of the people killed by the gold thief. After many years, she finally found out that his father's murderer was still in Abashiri prison. In the middle of their conversation, Asirpa noticed something in the tattoo. After looking at it in more detail, she found out that the tattoo was drawn according to a piece of the human body, which means the mysterious man deliberately drew the tattoo to peel off the prisoner's skin so they could be joined together as a map. Hearing this, Sugimoto planned to skin the man so he wouldn't have to carry the body everywhere. Asirpa said that the brown bear would definitely attack him again, so like it or not, they had to make a trap first. When the two of them were preparing the trap, the brown bear suddenly came, so Sugimoto had to face it with his bare hands. Asirpa then immediately aimed at the bear with her arrow, and with one breath, the Ainu girl fired a sharp shot. But unfortunately, the bear got even worse, making them both cornered. But when they were almost killed, a white wolf appeared and attacked the bear. Thanks to the white wolf, they were finally able to knock down the bear. Asirpa then said that the wolf was called Ritar, and the wolf had always protected her since she was little. Asirpa then tore the bear apart, then gave its gallbladder to Sugimoto. Based on the Ainu's experience, the gallbladder of brown bears can be used as medicine for wounds. Asirpa also intended to give the meat, because the Ainu people are prohibited from eating brown bears killed by humans, especially as the tribe prohibits its members from killing other humans except when the situation was very urgent. On the other hand, Sugimoto had actually killed thousands of people during the war, and he was sure that he would definitely go to hell. After talking with Asirpa for a long time, Sugimoto began to peel off the tattoos on the man's body and planned to continue his journey tomorrow morning. He wanted to invite Asirpa in the search for the gold because he needed Ainu people who knew about Hokkaido and its surroundings. And Asirpa thought by going with Sugimoto, she would have the opportunity to take revenge for the death of his father. Hearing Sugimoto's words, Asirpa agreed to come, but the condition was that Sugimoto was not allowed to kill anyone on their journey. Without thinking twice, Sugimoto agreed. The next day, they traveled to Otaru to look for a tattooed ex-convict, but before leaving, they prepared several traps so that no wild animals would attack them again. Arriving there, Sugimoto went to the public bathing because everyone there was definitely going to undress. However, it turned out that the visitors and local people didn't know anything about the tattoos that Sugimoto meant. On the other hand, Asirpa asked Ajisha whether she had ever served customers with strange tattoos. But at the same time, suddenly a jerk looked down on Asirpa just because she was from the Ainu tribe. Hearing the insult, Asirpa immediately beat that man. After that, Asirpa and Sugimoto decided to go to another place and return to the snow forest. However, they didn't realize that two men were following them from behind, and when the two men were about to attack Asirpa and Sugimoto, he was suddenly trapped. Turns out they were both ex-convicts who had been looked after by Sugimoto and Asirpa. Fortunately, Sugimoto and Asirpa had set the trap, and after being interrogated, those two men introduced themselves as Kenjiro and Yoshiteki. Since they got out of prison, they had always been together so that they could protect each other. Because he promised not to kill anyone, Sugimoto finally told Asirpa to draw the tattoos of the two men. While she was drawing, Asirpa asked Kenjiro about the identity of the mysterious man who drew the tattoos. Kenjiro admitted that he didn't know the name, but it was clear that the mysterious man was a very scary person, especially since his face was damaged because he had been tortured by the guards. And somehow he was still alive until now, and while he was in prison, people called him Naparabo. According to Japanese beliefs, Naparabo is a ghost without a face. After telling the story, suddenly someone attacked Kenjiro. Seeing Kenjiro dead, Sugimoto and the others immediately hid, and the man who shot Kenjiro was a man wearing a white cloak. The man then hunted the three of them like a wild animal hunting its prey, but he didn't know that Sugimoto was not a prey, but a very ferocious lion. When his cloak was opened, the man was wearing an army uniform, and it turned out he was a member of the 7th Division, the strongest troops among the other divisions. Meanwhile, Sugimoto was from the 1st Division, and of course, they both had fought together in the Russo-Japanese War. But even so, the man still invited Sugimoto to a duel because he wanted to seize all the codes that Sugimoto had, and without the slightest fear, Sugimoto immediately accepted the challenge. In the midst of the fight, Asirpa reminded Sugimoto not to kill his opponent. Here, Sugimoto's rival seemed shocked when he heard Sugimoto's name because since the war ended, people always talked about Sugimoto's brutality and called him Immortal Sugimoto. Because of that, the man chose to run away. Sugimoto then threw a rifle at him until he fell into a ravine. Sugimoto did all this so that the man wouldn't tell the commander. At the same time, Yoshitake seemed to have untied his hands and immediately ran away. Unfortunately, they ended up falling into a very cold ice river, and if they didn't warm their bodies quickly, they would experience hypothermia, and it could have fatal consequences. Because of that, Yoshitake decided to work with Sugimoto to make a bonfire. Luckily, he brought a bullet that could be used to start the fire. After their condition improved, Yoshitake let Asurpa draw his tattoos, and while waiting for the drawing to be done, he told about one of the inmates who led the escape from prison. At first, Yoshitake didn't think that the prisoner could lead, especially since he was an old man, but it turned out that he was a former samurai and legendary warlord named Toshizo Hijikata. Rumor said he was in Otaru with a mission to kill all the former prisoners so that he could get all of the gold. And sure enough, Hijikata was in the city and he came to a former convict named Ashiyama. In Hokkaido, he was famous as the best judo fighter and has never been defeated. He had a square lump on his head, which is the strongest part of his skull. Of all the fighters, only Hijikata had a chance to beat him. After a short fight, Hijikata showed him a picture of tattoos that he got from several inmates. He thought that the way to get the tattoo didn't have to be murder, and the most important thing is he had to be able to find all the prisoners as quickly as possible, because the 7th Division were also looking for the gold treasure. So, to strengthen his alliance, Hijikata invited Ashiyama to join him, and later he promised to share the gold evenly if Ashiyama wanted to come with him. On the other hand, Yoshitake said goodbye to Sugimoto and Asurpa to continue his own journey, even though Sugimoto had warned him to come with him so that he wouldn't be caught by the 7th Division. However, Yoshitake said that he was good at running away, so under any circumstances, he would definitely be able to escape. That evening, the 7th Division troops led by a lieutenant named Tsurumi got a report from the man in the cloak who attacked Sugimoto earlier. With shaking hands, the man said that he had been defeated by the immortal Sugimoto. Tsurumi was immediately stunned because the story of Sugimoto's brutality has become a legend in the military world. The next day, Tsurumi deployed his troops to look for Sugimoto in the hills. Meanwhile, Sugimoto and Asurpa were looking for food for their supplies, and not long after, a group of the 7th Division passed by. Sugimoto and Asurpa then split up to outwit them. Sugimoto then led the soldiers to where the brown bear lived, hoping to lure the bear out. However, when the bear didn't come out, Sugimoto was determined to go into the hole. On the other hand, one of the members of the 7th Division managed to find Asurpa, who was hiding in a tree. Unfortunately, the soldier saw tattoo images of the treasure brought by Asurpa, so he intended to finish her off, but suddenly the white wolf attacked him. Even though the soldier was evil, Asurpa stopped Ritar the wolf and let the man live. Before leaving, Asurpa warned the soldier to go home and not return to the area again. After that, she invited Sugimoto to stop by her village to take a rest, and she also wanted to take care of the baby bear that Sugimoto found. When they arrived at the village, the people welcomed Sugimoto well. Even though the Japanese soldiers were known as cruel people, Sugimoto was well accepted because he had become good friends with Asurpa, an Ainu girl. Asurpa introduced Sugimoto to her family, and she also introduced him to Ainu culture, such as food ingredients that come from the forest and also how to be polite. Here, Sugimoto felt very appreciated, unlike the Japanese military, which did not at all give him the appreciation he deserves. That night, when the others were asleep, Sugimoto was chatting with Asurpa's uncle. Here, Asurpa's uncle thanked Sugimoto because he wanted to be friends with his niece, because since her father died, Asurpa lived in loneliness, and her only friend was Ritar, the white wolf. Asurpa grew up with this animal, but she's very humane. However, Asurpa's uncle asked Sugimoto to continue the search for gold without Asurpa, because he thought this journey was too risky and could endanger his niece's life. Hearing this, Sugimoto agreed and left secretly. On the other hand, Tsurumi and his troops went to the hills after Sugimoto managed to escape. But on the way, his captain suddenly came. He was angry because Tsurumi had brought the troops without permission. Not only that, the captain also planned to remove Tsurumi's position because there was something wrong in his mind after suffering a skull injury. Especially now that he has to always wear a head protector, so he's no longer fit to lead troops. Instead of obeying his captain's orders, Tsurumi went crazy and bit the captain. And when the captain ordered his man to shoot Tsurumi, instead he was the one who was shot. After that, Shirumi was determined to find Sugimoto, then take the pictures of the tattoo he was carrying and avenge the death of his soldiers. At the same time, Yoshitake was looking for Ajishi to have fun, but unfortunately, he ended up meeting Ashiyama, who had collaborated with Hijikata to catch the ex-convict with a tattoo. Yoshitake immediately used his skills to run away. When he met the soldiers, Yoshitake reported that there was a tattooed person who was chasing him. The soldiers immediately pointed their guns at Ashiyama, but he was a judo master who should not be underestimated. In the midst of the battle, a man wearing a hat intervened, and he was the person ordered by Hijikata to divert people's attention because during the battle, Hijikata robbed a bank to retrieve his long-lost katana. On the other side, Tsurumi and his troops came to the location after hearing a bomb explosion. Then, while searching the bank which had been destroyed, he saw a white-haired man in front of the bank, who was none other than Hijikata. He was shocked because he thought that the samurai legend had been dead a long time ago, but he wouldn't just let him go without giving an explanation about the robbery. Meanwhile, Sugimoto was enjoying a chicken noodle soup, but he was disturbed by twin soldiers who were sent to catch him. Sugimoto was forced to stop eating and immediately attack them brutally. Unfortunately, Sugimoto was surrounded by dozens of armed soldiers, and in the end, he was caught by Tsurumi's troops. However, Tsurumi didn't immediately kill Sugimoto. Instead, he invited him to talk in a stall while enjoying a dish. At first, Tsurumi asked nicely about the gold treasure tattoo. However, because Sugimoto didn't want to tell him, the conversation turned tense. Tsurumi offered a cooperation where he would give Sugimoto a lot of shares if he managed to find the gold. Besides, Tsurumi was also going to build a new government with the gold and was going to give Sugimoto a good position. But Sugimoto didn't want to deal with him. As a result, Tsurumi started to get fed up and ordered the twin soldiers to torture him. Even though Sugimoto was tortured until he bled, he didn't feel the slightest pain. His body has a very fast wound recovery system, so he won't die easily. On the other hand, Asurpa felt abandoned, so she started looking for Sugimoto's whereabouts. She told Retard to sniff the sock marks, but it turned out to be Yoshitake's socks. Therefore, they found the wrong person. Seeing Asurpa's arrival, Yoshitake suspected that Sugimoto had betrayed Asurpa, but the girl didn't agree with this assumption and told Retard to attack Yoshitake. Afraid of being eaten by a wolf, Yoshitake said that he had seen Sugimoto arrested by the 7th Division. Hearing the explanation, Asurpa threatened to shoot Yoshitake with a poisoned arrow if he didn't want to take her to the place where Sugimoto was being held hostage. Finally, Yoshitake was forced to follow Asurpa's orders. On the other hand, Sugimoto tried to provoke the twins' anger, and when they got emotional, Sugimoto started to immediately break free. Unfortunately, Sugimoto was caught again by Tsurumi's men, but at the same time, Yoshitake managed to find the place. With his skills in running away, Yoshitake decided to infiltrate through the narrow trellis attached to the window. Sure enough, he would be able to get through it with one try. Not wanting to waste any time, Yoshitake immediately unties Sugimoto. But unfortunately, when he wasn't finished yet, the twin soldiers came back in and intended to avenge Sugimoto's actions. Hearing the commotion, Tsurumi went straight to the hostage room. There he saw one of the twin soldiers already dead, while Sugimoto was still alive with bowls out of his stomach. Sugimoto then offered a deal. He would give Tsurumi all the tattoos he had gotten as long as he would take him to the hospital. Without thinking twice, Tsurumi accepted the deal and ordered some of the soldiers to take Sugimoto to hospital. But when they were gone, Tsurumi realized that the balls that Sugimoto was holding were not his own, but belonged to his twin soldier. Sugimoto, who was already outside, beat all the soldiers guarding him. In the middle of the fight, Sugimoto got help from Asurpa. Meanwhile, Yoshitake managed to set fire to the hostage area to distract Tsurumi and his men. Unfortunately, Tsurumi again sent troops to chase Sugimoto. One of the twin soldiers attacked Sugimoto repeatedly to take revenge for the death of his twin brother. While they were fighting on the cart, Asurpa tried to free the horse from the cart, and after that, she gave Sugimoto a wooden weapon so that he could defeat the soldier. However, it didn't stop there because they still had to face Tsurumi. Fortunately, Asurpa was able to shoot her arrow, making the lieutenant fell. Even though he failed to catch Sugimoto and Asurpa, Tsurumi was still able to grin. His base was also on fire and many of his troops died. It turned out he was smiling because he managed to steal one of the tattoo images. So that it wouldn't be taken again, he deliberately sewed it onto his own body. The next day, Sugimoto invited Asurpa to continue their journey. On the way, Sugimoto thanked Azurpa for her help last night. However, Azurpa suddenly asked why Sugimoto left her. Sugimoto then answered that he left her because he didn't want to hurt other people. Moreover, he already considered Azurpa his best friend, so he didn't want to repeat what happened to Taraji during the war. After explaining the reason, Sugimoto became more open. In fact, he wanted to tell about his very dark past. At that time, he had two best friends who accompanied him in any situations. They were Taraji and Yumeko. However, in 1899, Sugimoto's family suffered from tuberculosis, which caused them to die one by one. Not only that, the residents started to stay away from Sugimoto's family because they didn't want to get infected. As a result, Sugimoto lived a lonely life. Then one day, his father died because of the disease. Sugimoto, who was fed up with his fate, immediately burned the house and his father's body. He then said goodbye to Yumeko because he would soon leave the village, and if within a year he didn't experience any symptoms, then he would come back. Sugimoto and Yumeko actually liked each other. Even Yumeko was Sugimoto's first love. However, the disease made them unable to be together. Shortly, Sugimoto returned to the village because he didn't have any symptoms. But on the day he returned home, he saw Taraji and Yumeko getting married. Seeing Sugimoto come back, Taraji was afraid that his best friend would steal his wife. Even though he was heartbroken, Sugimoto still tried to stay calm and congratulated Taraji sincerely. Several years later, they both fought together to defend the country, even though in the end Taraji chose to sacrifice himself to protect Sugimoto. When Taraji was dying, he advised Sugimoto to look after Yumeko, who was suffering from an acute eye disease. Therefore, Sugimoto had to find gold in Hokkaido for Yumeko's medical expenses. So this was the real reason why he really wanted to get the treasure hidden. After saying these messages, Taraji breathed his last breath, which made Sugimoto unable to hold back his tears. After the war, Sugimoto went home to the village, conveyed the news of Taraji's death to Yumeko. However, Yumeko was completely blind and didn't recognize Sugimoto because the smell of the blood was very strong. Hearing the story, Azurpa was sad, and because they had the same goal, she promised to always be by Sugimoto's side until he managed to find the gold. After that, she would take revenge on Naparabo. At the end of the film, Hijikata was sharpening his sword. He then told his alliance that he would use the gold to form a new country in Hokkaido. He planned to re-establish the Republic of Ezo, which was previously considered a rebellion attempt. On the other hand, Shirumi bought weapons from the Russians to prepare to search for gold because soon, Hokkaido would become a battlefield. There were many people who were also targeting the gold.